अजीज साथियों अस्सलाम वालेकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। मैनचेस्टर में जो इंसिडेंट हुआ उस सिलसिले में बैरिस्टर साहब ने यहाँ हम सब को इकट्ठा किया। इस मौका पर मैं जो दिलपजीर साहब आप क्या कहेंगे, इंतहाई दुख दे ये लम्हे थे।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। सबसे पहले तो जनाब मैं बैरिस्टर साहब का और ख्वाहिश साहब का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ कि जिनने हमें मौका फराहम किया, और आपका एज ए मीडिया। देखें, ये हमारी कम्युनिटी के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी यानी वेकअप होने की ज़रूरत है इस वक्त, क्योंकि हम बटे हुए हैं, बिखरे हुए हैं। बाकी कम्युनिटी का देखें, उन पे कोई इस तरह का एक्शन नहीं होता, हम पे क्यों होता है? ये पहला नहीं है, पहले भी एक दो हो चुके हैं। और ये मुझे बैकग्राउंड नहीं पता कि क्या हुआ है, असल मामला क्या है, लेकिन जो पुलिस ने रिएक्शन लिया है, यकीन करें ये काबिल मजम्मत है और इसको कोई भी बादशाह एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगा। लेकिन मेरी आपकी टीवी की वसातत से अपनी कम्युनिटी के नौजवानों से गुजारिश है कि प्लीज़ जज्बाती होकर फैसले नहीं करना। अब हमें ज़रूरत है एक होने की, हमें ज़रूरत है अपनी सारी कम्युनिटी को इकट्ठा करने की। हमारे कम्युनिटी लीडर, हमारे पीरान हजरात, हमारे जो अलामे हजरात हैं, मौलाना हजरात हैं, उन सब का फर्ज बनता है कि अपने यानी जुमे के खुतबे पे नॉर्मल अपने अपने सोर्सेज के मुताबिक सबके घरों में ये मैसेज पे जाएं। अपने बच्चों को ज़रा कंट्रोल करना है। हमने कोई ऐसा जज्बाती फैसला नहीं करना जिसकी हमें बहुत बड़ी सजा का भुगतनी पड़े, लेकिन हमने यक ज़बान होकर हमने एहतजाज रिकॉर्ड कराना है। हमने यानी गवर्नमेंट बरतानिया को, पुलिस को ये बताना है कि ये तरीका कार एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है और इसको यानी बिल्कुल कंट्रोल करना चाहिए। और यानी हमारी कम्युनिटी को चाहिए कि हमारा साथ दें, अपने लोगों का साथ दें, हमारी जो कम्युनिटी लीडर हैं उनका साथ दें। जो हमारे मेंबरान पार्लियामेंट हैं वो बेशक कोई पाकिस्तानी कम्युनिटी में यानी वो पाकिस्तानी ज़रूर हैं, लेकिन वो बरतानिया की पार्लियामेंट में गए हैं। लेकिन उनका फ़र्ज बनता है कि यहाँ पे स्टैंड करना कि ये ऐसी जो है नाइंसाफ़ी नाकाबिल कबूल है और कभी कबूल नहीं करेंगे।
इस मौका पर ख्वाजा साहब आप क्या मैसेज देंगे?
Thank you very much first for giving me the opportunity to talk about this horrific incident that happened today. Well, actually, I came across it today. First of all, I want to comment on exactly what I saw. What I saw was intense police brutality against vulnerable juvenile individuals. Now, from my understanding is that this was just a fray situation that could have been quite easily handled by professional police. However, what transpired was high levels of force, unnecessary force against juveniles, their family members, innocent family members that were there to try and appease the situation. Now, under any normal circumstances, you would expect the police authority to be dealing with these types of situations on a daily basis, right? Not adding pressure and fire to this situation, which is what happened. The incident itself, if I describe it, was totally inhumane. You cannot allow authority like the police to use the human head as a football and score penalties. The uniforms that these police wear, the armed police, I presume this was a leather boot with a metal toe cap. Many of the people have commented on this incident and described this as being a brutal incident, excessive force being used. So, having said that about the incident, and I totally condemn this type of behavior from anybody, right? The police should be able to deal with these situations amicably, not fuel the situation. My advice to everybody is that we should not take this out of proportion and start to create difficult situations for the public. We should let the professionals deal with this, the lawyers, the authorities that know exactly how to deal with this situation. So the youth should not resort to the same type of behavior or forceful action that the police took. Rather, they should unite and ask the authorities for why did this occur? Why is it that the right sort of training is not being provided to the police officers that have to deal with these situations, and start to look at ways of improving the relationships between the juveniles and the police. Thank you very much.
सर यूथ को आप भी रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, आप क्या कहेंगे?
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। ये जो इंसिडेंट मैनचेस्टर में हुआ है देख के बड़ा दुख हुआ है, लेकिन मैं अपनी जो हमारी कश्मीरी और पाकिस्तानी नेशन है उसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि खुदा के लिए आप यूनाइटेड हो जैसे दूसरी नेशंस है, कि दूसरी नेशन में अगर ऐसा कोई इश्यू होता है तो टॉप टू बॉटम बोलते हैं वो, और अपने मसले वो गवर्नमेंट लेवल तक लेके जाते हैं। लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेट मैं ये कहूँगा कि हमारी जो नेशन है यहाँ पे वो यूनाइटेड नहीं है, तो उसकी वजह से हर डिपार्टमेंट यहाँ उसका एडवांटेज उठा रहा है। तो इसको बॉटम से लेके टॉप तक जो हमारे एमपी हैं यूके में, उनको भी इस मैटर को सीरियस लेके और हाई लेवल गवर्नमेंट तक ये कंडेम करना चाहिए और मैसेज देना चाहिए कि दिस इज अनएक्सेप्टेबल। थैंक यू जी।
सर आप यूथ के हवाले से मैं चाहूँगा इंग्लिश में जो आपकी फीलिंग क्या है?
As what I've seen today, for anybody that sees that the blood will boil. There's a mother there, she's trying to stop it, and it's totally unacceptable. Yes, it should not be repeated, and that's the message we need to send across. This should never be repeated, never should be accepted in any way or form. It should always be applicably and responsibly taken actions regarding it, not taken as you wish or as you feel. Because you've got the power, you've got the uniform to do what you feel like. The uniform represents the law, abide by it. I'm sure the youth were doing the same thing. But what they did was unreasonable, unrealistic, and that was not acceptable and should never be repeated. And that's something that we should make sure that they take in point and make sure that it's never, ever repeated again to any youth, regardless of race, wherever they're from. Unity is needed and make sure the message is spread.
आखिर में मैं कहूँगा बैरिस्टर साहब, आप इंटरनेशनली ये चीज़ें देखते हैं, एक आपका विजन है, आपका मैसेज इस मौका पर, आप लीगल भी जानते हैं और दूसरे मामलात भी जानते हैं, किस तरह से आप देखना चाहते हैं अपनी नेशन को?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. पहले तो मैं शुक्रगुजार हूँ मलिक साहब आपका कि आपने अपना कीमती वक्त निकाल कर यहाँ आए हैं, और बाकी दोस्तों का। On this issue, the point that has been made, was this police brutality or reasonable force? Clearly, any objective person looking at this video would say that this was police brutality.
Definitely.
The next question one considers and asks, is this a few rotten apples within the police force, or is it endemic within the police force? Let's say that this video was not made. Let's say this did not come into the public eye. Would we still see the reaction of the media, the community, the public, and senior officers and those that account these individuals in the same way, or would there be plausible deniability? As a person who's actively involved in the community, whilst this seems like an isolated incident of a few rotten apples, I can tell you it's not.
Oh.
It's not as widespread, but it's not just isolated to this one incident. Unreasonable force, where a person is holding his hands, as you will see in that video, the use of tear gas whilst he's not resisting arrest, the use of a taser while he has no weapon on him and he's not resisting arrest, the use of brutal force in apprehending him is beyond measure. Now clearly this makes everyone's blood boil. But what makes it boil more is when I receive texts from colleagues of my age that say, Abid, do you remember the 70s and the Toxteth riots, the Brixton riots, the Lord Scarman report? Have we not learned the lessons from this? And if we take a strand from the death of Stephen Lawrence and the Lawrence inquiry and the endemic institutional racism that existed within the Metropolitan Police and other police forces, is it true to say that a decade and 2 decades on, in terms of our training, in terms of our capacity building of public servants, we've not gone beyond that? There are some very, very serious answers that we require as a community. And those in power should not brush this under the carpet, because it may be you are brushing something that's going to turn into the Frankenstein monster at a later date. We thought that community relations 2-3 decades on are more harmonious, but clearly this shows they're not. And yes, I take the advice we should take reasonable measures to bring these people to accountability using all legal methods, but we should not be frightened of peaceful protest. We should not be frightened of asking for a public inquiry, and we should not be frightened of the police being investigated up and down the country where reports have been made. But I want to see from the Independent Police Complaints Commission how many reports of brutality have been submitted, and how many people are aware that an independent police complaints procedure exists for reporting this. I want to know of the reports, how many are from ethnic minorities, and how many of those individual officers were either retrained, suspended, or sacked. Because in this case, there is no difference of opinion within the community. This warrants an immediate sacking, gross misconduct, following the procedure. So, Malik Saab, this is a message to the community. This is what should go out, and we should act, as everyone said, in a united manner to bring these people that acted like animals in their behavior, not like public servants who are there to protect and serve. We should bring them to justice.
And this time, if I ask you about international media and our political, behavior, what do you say about that?
Well, unfortunately, if you link it internationally, it's not a good state of affairs. There are lots of atrocities being committed, and we look to the accountable bodies, for instance, whether that be in Palestine or Kashmir or China or other parts of the world, and you see the United Nations sitting on the sidelines. You see the United Nations passing resolutions and the European Court of Human Rights, but there's no enforcement. So when there's no enforcement of brutality, there comes the tipping point. When there comes a tipping point, it boils over. When it boils over, it is not good for humankind. Malik Saab.
सुन लिया जी आपने। तो इंशाल्लाह जब कम्युनिटी की कॉल दी जाए तो हम सबको इकट्ठा होना चाहिए। इसी में हमारी इज्जत रहेगी। जीवन है तो मिलन है।
इंशाल्लाह।
Inshallah.